In the top stories, St. Kitts Nevis government injects $12 million into the severance payment fund as part of COVID-19 response. LIAT updates list of countries with travel restrictions, and U.S. President says he wants U.S. back at work by April 12th. Hello and welcome to the ZIZ Midday Newscast. Today is Wednesday, March 25th, 2020. I am your presenter, Shaira Flanders. Nationally, as part of its comprehensive stimulus package announced to soften the significant health, fiscal and economic impact of the COVID-19 disease or novel coronavirus would have on the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis, the Team Unity government has committed to the provision of additional resources in the region of $12 million to capitalize the severance payment fund. This was announced by Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, Dr. the Honorable Timothy Harris, when he addressed the nation during a press conference yesterday, Tuesday, March 24th, at the Ocean Terrace Inn or OTI. Prime Minister Harris noted that the reasons behind the injection of $12 million into the severance fund is obvious in that, quote, with higher unemployment, we expect that there will be greater demand upon the severance fund, end quote. The Protection of Employment Act was originally passed in 1986. It was revised in 2002 and is now known as the Protection of Employment Act, Chapter 18.27. The Act makes certain provisions in respect of termination of employment, the establishment of a severance payments fund, payment of severance payments to employees, and for other related or incidental matters. The $12 million provided for the severance payment fund is part of the approximately $120 million stimulus package response announced by the Honorable Prime Minister. And in other news, police are investigating a traffic accident on Pond Road in which a pedestrian was struck by a vehicle. The incident occurred close to 8 p.m. on Friday and involved pedestrian Margaret Cannings of Ponds Extension and motorcar PA 7981, which is owned by Esmond Andrews of Old Road and was being driven by Jean Garibaldi Gillies of Wade Garden. According to police, PA 7981 was traveling west to east along Pond Road and collided with Cannings, who was crossing the road in the vicinity of the police training school. She sustained a broken right leg and other injuries and was transported via ambulance to the JNF General Hospital, where she is currently warded. On the regional scene, as of Monday, 23rd March 2020, LIAT has suspended all flights into and out of Guyana, Trinidad, Martinique, Guadeloupe, St. Martin, Grenada, Tortola, and the BVI. LIAT has also suspended all flights into and out of George F.L. Charles Airport in St. Lucia as of Tuesday, 24th March. In order to ensure proper screening of passengers during this COVID-19 pandemic and to comply with various government travel orders, LIAT has also suspended all online check-in. Effective Wednesday, March 25th, 2020, the U.S. Virgin Islands will close its doors to all visitors for 30 days, joining other destinations in global efforts to help stop the spread of coronavirus 2020. With 17 positive cases and more expected from pending tests, Governor Albert Bryan Jr. said safeguarding the health of residents and visitors remains the highest priority. Governor Bryan stated that although the decisions to close the territory's ports fall under the jurisdiction of the federal government, the administration's move to prohibit visitor arrivals will help minimize the potential impact of the novel coronavirus 2019 on vulnerable members of the Virgin Islands community. Restrictions are now in place that prevent hotels, guest houses, bed and breakfast, home sharing properties, and charter vessels from accepting new guests. Guests who have already checked into lodging facilities are advised to return home, but can remain in the territory if they choose. Emergency management personnel, overnighting flight crews, and officials responding to the COVID-19 crisis are exempt from this restriction. And moving on to news on the international scene, U.S. President Donald Trump says he wants the country opened up and just rearing to go in a little over 2 weeks, which would mean the lifting of the 15-day self-imposed guidelines for coronavirus. Here's more.
The New York Stock Exchange on an unprecedented rebound. Despite the fact that 1 in 1,000 people in the city are infected, the Dow posted a gain of over 2,000 points, the best day since 1933. Investors apparently believing that Congress was near agreement on a $2 trillion stimulus bill. President Trump asserting that the reaction was also linked to his expedited timeline for ending the shutdown across the country.
Today, as you probably saw, the Dow surged over 2,100 points. That's the all-time record history of the exchange. This is very encouraging, and I think part of the reason is they are looking at what is close to being passed, and I think a very big part of it is they see that we want to get our country open as soon as possible.
One economic advisor supporting the president's hope that anti-pandemic measures could be eased within 3 weeks.
If we can target zones where the virus is less prevalent, things are safe, we're not abandoning the health professionals' advice, but there is a clamor to try to reopen the economy and perhaps I'll call it less of a shut-in.
But the health experts are being a lot more cautious in discussing timelines, insisting that there's insufficient data to decide on even a partial lifting of shutdowns at present.
We need to know what's going on in those areas of the country where there isn't an obvious outbreak. Is there something underneath the surface that says, wait a minute, you better be careful and really clamp down? Or what looks there that you don't really have to be as harsh as you are in other areas. So it's looking at information that up to this point, John, we never had. So it's a flexible situation.
At the end of the day, no agreement in Congress either, a fact that could temper any renewed surge when the stock market opens again. Mike Hanna, Al Jazeera, Washington.
The coronavirus pandemic sweeping through Western Europe is overwhelming their healthcare systems. Here's more.
1 in 5 Spanish residents is aged 65 or older, so the devastating impact of coronavirus in the country is no surprise. What's shocking is how the care system collapsed so quickly under the onslaught. Military emergency units are disinfecting premises as fast as humanly possible, as here in Madrid. But care home staff have been overwhelmed with desperate consequences.
I know the majority are fulfilling their duties. They are paying attention. But listen, this has to be said. The army, in some of their visits to the care centers, have seen elderly people completely abandoned, even dead in their beds.
With Madrid's hospital morgues full, this ice rink has been requisitioned to receive and store the bodies of the coronavirus victims. So infectious, even in death, that the staff are wearing full protective suits. In Italy, the latest clinic, repurposed as a coronavirus unit, has opened in Rome. Every single patient requires truly intensive care. Intensive in terms of staffing and intensive in terms of equipment. And there is simply not enough to go around. A growing number of Italian town mayors have recorded video messages, angrily ordering the public to stop flouting the lockdown rules. One mayor threatens to send in the carabinieri with a flamethrower to break up a planned graduation party. The shortage of critical care capacity in the UK is being at least partly addressed with a brand new temporary hospital being created in just 1 week at a huge exhibition centre in London.
The NHS Nightingale Hospital will comprise 2 wards, each of 2,000 people. With the help of the military and with NHS clinicians, we will make sure that we have the capacity that we need so that everyone can get the support they need.
For the first time, coronavirus restrictions are now having a tangible effect on millions of UK citizens. A stay-at-home order has replaced the previous advisory guidance, but not everyone seems to have grasped the urgency. This grocery store here in Red Hill is about the only shop that we found open in this town, but the lockdown is far from being strictly observed here, and maintaining it over what could be 3 or even 4 months is going to be a real challenge. And construction workers in particular show little sign of social distancing or other precautions. The example of this site in central London was far from unusual across the UK. But religious services of all denominations are banned. Wedding plans and baptism ceremonies are on hold. Only funerals will go ahead. This virus robs the joy from society and leaves only the grief. Paul Brennan, Al Jazeera, Red Hill.
And now for the weather. Present weather is partly cloudy. A gentle breeze of 8 miles per hour is blowing from the northeast. Today's temperature will peak at 75 degrees Fahrenheit. Seas are reaching 4 to 5 feet. Expect partly cloudy conditions with a slight chance of showers today and mostly fair skies tonight. Sunset today will be at 6:23 p.m. and the sun is expected to rise tomorrow at 6:10 a.m. And that brings us to the end of the ZIZ Midday Newscast. Thank you so much for tuning in. I am your presenter, Shaira Flanders. Have a good one.